All right, so why don't we get started? Welcome everybody to the Spiritual Direction Certificate webinar. Just to introduce myself, my name is Greg Shapero. I'm the Admissions Advisor here at Divine Mercy University. Just as a background, I've been working in the university system and enrollment for the past 6.5 years now. But I've been with Divine Mercy University for almost 2 years now. So my background has been working in the psychology and counseling fields and social services. But recently, I actually made a switch over to a spiritual direction. I've really enjoyed doing that. Just speaking with people that have been enthusiastic about this sort of ministry and their experiences within spiritual direction, and now they're calling to go into this has been just a real blessing. So I've been really happy to do that. So today, just as a heads up, I think I mentioned it earlier, there's going to be a lot of information that we're going to cover. I'm going to make sure that you know all the details of the program. But as any questions are coming up, go ahead and list your questions in the chat and the Q&A section. I might get to a point where I can answer that as we're going through it. If I don't, that's fine. I'll make sure that we cover everything toward the end of it. So we're going to open a Q&A after we cover all of the details. So with that said, why don't we get started? So today we're going to be covering who we are as a university, our mission, our history, and really how this program is different from so many other spiritual direction certificate programs. Next, we're going to talk about what is spiritual direction. A lot of you probably already have a good sense of it, but I think sometimes we use that term in different ways. So I want to share with you how we're defining that program, that sort of phrase. And then after that, we're going to go into the about what this program will actually entail for all of you, the ins and outs, the courses, the time frame, that sort of thing, and then also the tuition. So let's get started. Just to share with you a little bit of the history of the university, we began back in 1999 under the name of the Institute for the Psychological Sciences. We were also called IPS. Some of you might be familiar with that. So we started with the PsyD in clinical psychology program. And then in 2014, we added the Master's in Psychology. In 2016, we added the School of Counseling. And so that had us change our name to Divine Mercy University when we went to university status. But the Spiritual Direction Certificate program is the newest of them. That one began only in 2019, so it's fairly new, but it's been going very well for us. Our cohorts have typically been made up of somewhere between 25 and 30 students. And what these all have in common is the mission of the university, which is the Catholic Christian meta model of the human person. So this is basically the integration of psychology with 2,000 years of church teaching on human dignity. This is, again, something that actually does separate this program from so many other spiritual direction certificate programs. There's a lot of them that are great that are out there, but what makes this one unique is not only that emphasis on the Catholic Christian understanding of human dignity, but how it's also related to, or rather how psychology can be related to that, having a better understanding of the human mind and how that allows for our spiritual directors to thrive in this sort of ministry. Next, just to share with you our accreditation, we are institutionally accredited through the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools. This is one of the 7 major accrediting bodies. So we do hold to a high standard of education. And we're also approved to operate by SCHEV. That's the State Council of Higher Education in Virginia. Now that top accreditation that you're seeing, which is the American Psychological Association, this is a programmatic accreditation, which you would only find in a doctoral program. So you might be asking, why is this one relevant to this one if this is not a doctoral program? I like to include it in here because we still use the APA writing style in all of the programs that we offer, including in this one. So this is also a way to better equip our students in spiritual direction before they go into this ministry as they're learning their skills and knowledge. So what is spiritual direction? I speak with a lot of students, and sometimes we have a very common understanding of what this is, and sometimes we look at it very differently. But we're approaching spiritual direction from the Catholic tradition, and so what this means is, first, it's accompaniment. It's assisting people on their path to the Lord, so working with them as they're growing in their faith. And it's the act of being there for them in service both to them and to the Lord. And then it's also deep listening to the directee, so to help them in deepening in their experience of the Lord and his narrative in their lives. So spiritual directors, and for many of you who have gone through spiritual direction, you'll notice that many times it's you sharing with your spiritual director where you are in your current life and in your faith life. And so it's important for that spiritual director to have that deep listening so that they can better work with you, but more so better accompany you. It's a pilgrimage toward God. It's a clear goal of growing closer to God. What it's not is therapy. I think sometimes people see it that way because there are sort of overlapping tones to it. You're sitting with an individual and speaking with them one-on-one. So it might even resemble therapy, but it's not therapy. It's a little bit different. And it's instead it's walking with them in their faith life. It's that accompaniment. And lastly, it's formation in mission. So it's the effort to, just like Jesus did, summon, form, and send forth. So for many of you, at one point, for you who have spiritual directors, you felt drawn, you felt summoned to actually seek that spiritual direction now. And as you've been going through it, you have gone through a faith formation. And at this point, you're here on this webinar because you feel like you're being sent to enter into this ministry yourselves. And so this is something to expect, that as you are active as spiritual directors, you too will work with people who have felt summoned to that sort of just growing in their faith formation with a spiritual director. And many of them themselves may become spiritual directors. So there are a lot of fruits to this. Next, why is spiritual direction such an important ministry? So first, it's offering the service of deep listening to others. This is, I think, very important for people as they're trying to wrap their heads around their own faith and trying to grow. And sometimes it really does take human agency to better understand what God is directing them to. And next, it's accompanying our sisters and our brothers in the faith to help strengthen in their faith, their hope, in faith, hope, and love, so the theological virtues. Next, it's guiding another to find the Lord in every situation. So whether it is a very traumatic situation that they've gone through and they're trying to find meaning and understanding and love from God through that difficult circumstance, or even if it's a very mundane situation that they're in, but they know that there's something that God is telling them. Spiritual direction helps people in finding God in all of these sort of circumstances. And it's a way that others may discover their call to be a spiritual director. So like I had said earlier, many of you have gone through spiritual direction, and at some point you've had that calling. Maybe someone has wanted you to become a spiritual director, and sometimes the Holy Spirit speaks to you through others. And so that's one way of doing it. Or maybe you just learned through silence and heard the Holy Spirit speak to you on that. And lastly, it's giving spiritual direction as help to others, also for the director to grow in his or her relationship with God. So one thing I'll share that was very interesting, I had the benefit of speaking with a spiritual direction student here on campus when she was here for her residency. And I asked her, how has this program helped her out in her ministry and just in general? And one thing that I wasn't expecting, but it makes a lot of sense, is that it's helped her out as a directee with her own spiritual director. She's better understood why her spiritual director would ask certain questions or guide her in certain directions. And so not only has it helped her understand that, it's helped her become a better directee, and it's enriched her communication with her own spiritual direction. So this is just another example of how there are more fruits involved in this than we may even realize. So what to expect in the spiritual direction certificate program? So the first thing is that all of the courses that you're taking are done online. So you're doing this online, and you're also doing this asynchronously. So in other words, you are logging into your discussion boards, you are reading your assignments, you are posting your responses in the discussion boards, you're listening to your pre-recorded lectures at any time that works within your schedule. Now, sometimes people think asynchronous means that you're left to your own devices, and that's not the case. You have your instructors. We have an extensive student support service team, so we make sure that assistance that's needed is there, but also that camaraderie. This is a cohort system, so you have your colleagues in the program, and it's very common that they lean on each other for that assistance. So you'll get that just as you would in a synchronous program as well. There are 6 courses in this program, and there are a couple of face-to-face components as well. So the first face-to-face component would be the 2 residencies, which happen on campus here in Sterling, Virginia. They're each only for 4 days, so they're not super extensive, but they will happen twice in the program. And then you also have a 60 practicum hour session as well. Not session, but 60 practicum hours that you would be fulfilling. And that would happen a little bit closer toward the end of the program. And that would happen in your local area. So you won't have to travel for that. You can do that within your apostolate or within your parish. And you'll have guidance from a supervisor, which would be one of your instructors. So they'll be there to help you through those 60 hours of practicum. You'll be logging those hours with them. And it'll also be an opportunity for you to share with them the successes. And if there are difficulties, which is extremely common, there might be some points where you have hiccups, and they're there to help you out and help push through that and make sure that you're growing in your skills and knowledge. So here are the courses that you'll be taking as students, and they're sequential. So you'll be taking them in this order. So the first course will be Ongoing Conversion, Deepening Discipleship, and the Foundations of Spiritual Direction. And then term 2, you'll have SDC 200, which is Human Development for Spiritual Direction. And then you'll have SDC 300, which is Relating Skills for Spiritual Direction. And in this course, this is where your first residency will be built in, and that will take place during week 7. And then you have, for your 4th course, Discernment and Spiritual Growth, Theory and Practice. And then your 5th course will be Advanced Spiritual Direction, Skills, and Practicum, Putting Out into the Deep. So for this 5th course, this is where residency number 2 will be built in. And that will take place during week 2. And then your last course will be Advanced Prayer and Situations. So again, they all go in this order, and you'll be taking one course at a time. Now, the residencies, and we have a few pictures from our from 2 recent residencies that we've had. So they happen here on campus. So this is where you and all of your classmates will gather together with your instructors and with clinical psychologists. And this is where you'll be able to put into practice the skills and knowledge that you've been learning. So you'll be able to go through these simulated scenarios. You'll be able to practice a little bit deeper into what you've been learning. And it's really enriching for our students. Every time I speak with them, they share about how this has been sort of the highlight of the program for them. So these will happen, again, twice in the program. The first one will happen during your 3rd course. The second one will happen during your 5th course. So they're spread apart. and they happen in Sterling, Virginia on campus. And what happens is, for those of you that might be much further out from Virginia, so maybe you have to fly, you would be flying in through Dulles. And just to give you an idea, Dulles Airport is only a 5 to 6 minute drive from here. So it's very close. You won't have to be going, too far from where the campus is located. And you'll be lodged right next door. Basically, there's a Hilton. I think it's a Hilton anyway. That's right here. In fact, it's so close that sometimes students will just walk from their hotel room over to the campus. And the other thing to highlight, we listed as 2 4-day residencies that happen. They're technically 5, not 5 full days, but I like to include the Wednesday evening just because it's more of a meet and greet. It's an opportunity for the students to gather together and just meet one another. And I think that it's also a dinner that's offered, but it is just a great way to sort of launch into these experiences. Along with that, just to share with you the time commitment and the as far as the length of the program. So it's term-based. So each term is 8 weeks, and you're taking only 1 course per 8-week term. Now, along with that, usually, and this is not set in stone, but typically students are committing somewhere between 6 to 9 hours per week. So that includes their reading, their logging into discussion boards and engaging that way, listening to their lectures, sitting down to write their assignments. So again, usually it's somewhere between 6 to 9 hours. And then there's also breaks between the terms. So you're not taking one term right after the other. You'll have about 8, 9, 10-week breaks, depending on where in the academic calendar we're looking at. But you will have these breaks in between where it's just an ability to offer some breathing room. Sometimes students will take this opportunity to just take a step back and have that break. Others will use that time to reread the information that they've been going through in their previous terms. But it's also an opportunity for students to replenish their funds, because it is a program where students are paying course by course, and so offering these breaks does allow them to replenish their funds as they're going through it. But many times also these breaks take place during major holidays. So for instance, during the Christmas season, don't expect to be doing you won't expect to have any sort of assignments due, because this will be during a break period. And in total, and including these breaks, this would take 2 years to complete. So let's talk about the cost. And I'm also going to share with you ways on how we can reduce the cost for you. The program is, it's $778 per course, and it's $1,000 per residency. Now that $1,000, that also covers lodging, it covers your materials, and it's going to cover most of your meals. So students are only responsible for 3 of their dinners and also for the travel. But as far as your lodging and meals and materials, that will be covered through that $1,000. Now, I had mentioned that there could be a way for us to reduce the cost for you. So for instance, if you are a consecrated religious or a volunteer with your parish, or even if you're a volunteer with a non-religious group, that could be a way for us to bring the cost down by 10%. So that would mean that instead of it being $778, it would be roughly $700 per course. And so that brings us to the end. One thing I'll highlight, we are currently still enrolling for the upcoming fall semester. So I know it's only around the corner, but that's going to start on August 17th. We still have some seats available in this upcoming cohort. So it's not too late if you're really feeling drawn to start class sooner than later. We can still do that. And the class would run up until about mid-August, and then you'll have a nice break between August and early January before the spring semester. So if you're interested in applying, if you look at the bottom red box, Usually the application is $25, but we can waive the fee for you if you use the code SDCREGFREE. This will make it a free application for you. So again, if you're interested in doing that, write down this code or screenshot it or whatever, and that would be a great time to begin the process and again waive the fee. So with that, I'm going to now open up the floor to all of you. I know that we had covered a lot of information, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. So it looks like we have one question from Benjamin. Can you explain more about the recorded classes? What is the quality of the recordings? Is the majority of the content in the classes, or is it found in the readings and discussion boards? So I don't know what the quality of the recordings would be. I guess it could be depending on the student and what services they're using, or how their internet connections are. But we make sure that these are at least decent quality, that I can at least speak to, because I haven't heard any sort of concerns about difficulties in understanding or clarity of the recordings. Let me reread that second part. Is the majority of the content in the classes, or is it found in the readings and the discussion boards? So it's going to be a mixture. So there are technically 3 textbooks that you'll have. One of those textbooks is actually the Bible, so that will be a huge part of your content. But then there are also just a couple of other textbooks that you'll be reading from. And you won't be reading the entire textbooks. You'll actually just be reading certain excerpts that they'll assign to you. So if I have a chance to speak with you one-on-one, Benjamin, and you'd like to speak more, I'd be happy to send you an email with the list of the other 2 textbooks that you'd have to read. And expect to be having a full discussion on these subjects in the discussion boards. But that will also be to the discretion of your immediate instructors. So that's a great question. Let's see, are there any other questions? One thing I'll also mention, which is a common question from people, and again, if any other questions are coming up, feel free to drop them in right now. But one question I do typically get from people is it required that you're a Catholic to be in this program? And the answer to that is no, it's not a requirement. While we do approach spiritual direction from the Catholic tradition, and that is very common, and our instructors are Catholic. We also have a lot of folks that enter into this program and they are non-Catholic Christians, and that's totally fine. And for many of them, they really value spiritual direction, and they're a real asset to the university. So again, it's not a requirement that you are. All right, so Benjamin asks, do you have a schedule of the courses and the breaks to see if it would be compatible with other things? Yes, absolutely. So I do have a schedule available. So again, Benjamin, I would love to get in touch with you and anyone else that's curious just to talk about what that schedule will look like. I'd be happy to send that to you via email. And also where those breaks will line up. So that way, because many of you might be planning maybe travel, or maybe you have major events that are going to take place, weddings or whatever they may be, during certain parts of the year. And so I know that's a huge, very important part. So I'd love to show you where those will fall so that you can better plan for the future and see if this is a good option. Another thing I'll highlight in line with that question, Benjamin, is that there's also an opportunity for students to take a leave of absence if they need to. So if for whatever reason you need to take a step back from the program, if it's because of a wedding or an emergency happens, you can do that. So you can take a leave of absence, and then when you're ready to jump back into the program and go back into where you left off, you can do that. And there's certainly an option for that. So that's a great question. And are there any other questions for me? Okay, and then one more question. Is this more focused on personal spiritual direction, or does it touch on leading spiritual exercises? That's a really good question. So it's going to be more in the direction of working with individuals one-on-one. But I will say that I have seen within the spiritual exercises that many times spiritual directors will have involvement with that. In fact, the spiritual directions will be, the spiritual exercises will be part of the program. There will be a point, I think toward the middle or end, where students will participate in the spiritual exercises. So some sort of retreat. And that would be done, again, locally to you. You won't have to travel for that. But you will need to take action in finding the ones that are in your local area. Right. And it looks like that reaches the end of our questions. So again, I'm just going to highlight that if you are really feeling ready to begin the program and you're looking to start sooner than later, now would be a great time to begin the application process. Again, this is the code right here if you wanted to write it down so we can waive the fee for you. And I'll certainly be in touch with you just to cover the information a little bit more deeply. And as questions come up, I'd be happy to answer that. So with that said, I just want to thank you all for joining me this evening. I'm really glad that you're all able to come in and just learn more about the Spiritual Direction Certificate Program. So again, if any questions come up, feel free to reach out to me. Thank you all, and God bless.